Okay, so the next thing we want to implement is this error handler right here. Now, since we still haven't set up our request handler for this request and it's giving us back an error, we can use this in order to set up and test this error case, okay? So what do we want to do for the error? Well, previously we set up a alert here down in the bottom, which for now we set invisible. So what we want to do in this case is we want to make it visible and show some kind of message, okay? So let's go back to our PyCharm and see how we can do this. Okay, so in the error case, we're going to be calling this alert that we created right here, and we have already assigned it an ID. So I'm going to copy this ID and call it using jQuery. So again, the # because we're using the ID, and I've just pasted the ID. So that's Ajax errors. And then here we can manipulate the style of this element. So we can say CSS to manipulate the style, and we say display because it's the style that manages whether it's visible or not. If you remember here in style, we set the display to be equal to none. So now we can go and say display is equal to block, for example. Okay. So if you write block, this will behave as a block and it will be visible. There are other types of displays, and if you want to find out more, I encourage you to Google just the CSS display and see all the different options there are. We won't go into too much detail of what they're doing, but block will basically make it visible for us. And the next thing we want to do is we want to manipulate the message inside of this alert sign. So if we go back to our alerts, and here we see we have a title inside of the strong tag and then a message. Now, in order for the message to be easier, to be accessible in a much easier manner, we should wrap this, or I prefer to wrap this around some kind of tag so that we can then use in order to access this item, okay? So I'm just going to wrap it around the span tag just so that it's easier for us to access, and we'll see how we can access it just right now. So actually, instead of having to type out all the time Ajax errors, because we're going to be using, for example, Ajax errors, and we're going to say find a strong, okay? This will find a strong tag in our Ajax errors alert box, and we will be able to manipulate this item that it has found with a strong tag, right? So the item we'll find will be this one here, and we will be able to manipulate the HTML inside of this tag that it finds with a strong tag. However, if you see, PyCharm is already hinting that we're using the same selector twice, which is always not too good of an idea. So instead, what we can do is we can create a variable and say Ajax errors is equal to, errors in plural, and we can just simply cut this piece of this selector and paste it in here. Okay, so now we have to use the Ajax errors variable in order to call each different item, and like that we can basically avoid doing the selector twice. Okay, so again, we're back to our find strong. Now once we have this element, we can say we can manipulate the HTML and we can set it to something. So for now, let's just set it to title, and we will change this in the future. And what we will be doing is the server will send us back in the response the title and the message that we want to print out. Okay, so this will be dynamic, and the server will tell what we will be passing inside of the title and inside of the message using our response. Okay, so, but since we don't have currently set up our response, we'll just leave this as title, and then we can do the exact same thing, but instead of the strong, we need to find a span, because if you remember, we wrapped this message inside of a span tag. That's why I wrapped it around, because like that it's easier for us to manipulate, and we also can manipulate the HTML, and we can say message. Okay, so far so good. Let's see if this is working now. So let's refresh, run, and in fact we see that this is working correctly. Okay, so this is great.